Hey everyone, I'm Victoria, and welcome to the Book Besteas Podcast, where the books are good, the takes are honest, and the tea is always hot. Today, again, you can see I'm by myself, and it is Jet's birthday. If you are on Instagram, leave a comment, say happy birthday. All right, let's get started. Today we're talking about Book 6 of the Throne of Glass series, Tower of Dawn. Let's get another perspective. So there's two schools of thought to this. Some people are like, Chaol was always just a human and he needed no redemption arc in this. And then other people, like me included, was like, this was truly his redemption arc and I finally am off the Chaol frustration train. How about y'all? Okay. First of all, I felt like most of my frustration from Chaol was coming from his insecurities being projected onto Yrene. So now he was able to finally work through it through this, what I would say both a redemption and a healing arc. So I'm okay with that. I was really enjoying that part of this book. The other thing that I enjoyed, Yrene and Sartaq. Guys, Sartaq is such an underrated MMC. He's not in my top 5 MMCs, but I would say that if he had more airtime in the series, then I feel like I could have fallen in love with him because he's truly like almost like a modern day gentleman in the sense that he's always going to put her first. He treats her as an equal and he's really strong and powerful himself, but then he sees all of that same kind of power and strength in her and respects her so much for it. I just love that. Okay, guys, I love the Yrene Sartaq coupling. And then we finally get Yrene back. I mean, it's been how many books? 5 books since Assassin's Blade. When we first met Yrene, Yrene saw so much potential in her, helped her become or move on from where she was. And now she truly became the healer that Yrene saw her to be and how she wanted to be. The woman went for her goals and she did a slam dunk. Good for her. I got lucky because I read this way after the whole series was released, so I got to do the tandem read, meaning that I focused more on the Empire of Storm stuff because I wasn't so hung up on where the heck is Yrene and the rest of the crew. I got to see both of them at the same time, which made it much easier, this book much more palatable. I know a lot of people actually skip Tower of Dawn, at least through their first read, and I get it. But upon thinking about how to prep for this episode, I was thinking more about what are some of the main takeaways from this book, and what I realized is this book had probably the most character growth out of the whole series. I think second to this would be Air of Fire, given Aylin's massive growth in Air of Fire. In this case, Chaol, was pretty much the same throughout most of the series up until this book. And then suddenly it was a whole 180 where he's now a completely transformed person for the better. And I'm just really impressed that SJM was able to serve this to us in a book. Yes, I know so many complaints about why did Chaol get his own book, but I also have to say that the life lessons that we take from not only his arcs in this book, but also the other characters' arcs make it worth it. Also because Chaol's just such a pivotal character in the whole series and in Aylin's life, that I feel like he needed to transform because obviously that the tension that he had with Yrene couldn't continue if he was going to still try to support her. There needed to be some sort of change, and what we realized with this book is that most of it had to be a healing arc for him, an intense one. So if I were to take one life lesson away from this book, it would be that the most transformative growth is really ugly and really difficult. And we see that with Chaol especially, but also with some of the other characters, because he had to really face his deepest, darkest fears and insecurities and his sense of identity, because it all got shattered the moment his legs were shattered. Even prior to that, he was still struggling because Yrene would call him out, which is a good thing, but he wasn't ready during the times when she called him out, so he would take it out on her. Now we see that he's able to finally look inward, identify deep down what was causing him to lash out. And so I really appreciate this arc. I really appreciate that whole lesson. Let's dive into the plot. First, I think Yrene being a part of Chaol's journey in this was so crucial because one, they kind of had a fling already, but two, she's almost in many ways the opposite of Chaol. She will go after her goals and not look back. She's going to tell people exactly how she feels or what she thinks, and she's very, very perceptive. I think Yrene is also a very underrated character here because she's essentially the one who prevented Yrene from killing Dorian and also prevented Chaol from breaking down essentially before he met Yrene. And she's also the one who convinced Sartok to convince his family to get involved in the war. I mean, Yrene is really, really clutch in so many ways. And what I love also about Yrene is she's really humble. Like, she's coming back to her home country. She has a lot of really strong skills, and Sartok recognized that. I mean, even before meeting her, he's heard all these stories about her and already fell in love with her. And then, yeah, she's like, what? Where did that come from? Like, I'm just, little old me. No, like, there's a moment in the book they recognize that she was capable of moving up higher and higher in the ranks, but she stayed where she was because she wanted to support other women, to be able to get other women to move up the ranks. She wants to believe in the greater good. When she was working with Chaol and the rebels, it wasn't about, oh, tell me what to do, I'll just do it blindly. No, she always had in her mind that I'm going to do what I believe is right. And I just love that about Yrene. Okay, let's talk about the Chaol side of things, because as I mentioned in other episodes, Chaol is really black and white, really stoic. Like, he's not going to really think on his feet or do things in a convoluted way like Yrene would in order to get what needs to get done. Instead, he's just going to be like, it's this. Take it or leave it. And that's not going to work with the Kagan because, first of all, they're very family oriented and they have pretty much everything they need. They have no incentive to go to war for Yrene and Dorian. So how is he going to convince them to do that? And I think Yrene, again, comes in clutch because she helps him find out more information about all of the royal siblings. Whereas he's so focused on his healing, which is important, very much needed, but I think that he truly didn't contribute too much to the politicking. But he gradually starts to learn along the way what it means to politic. And I think by the end of this book, he's not quite there yet, but he's a much better liaison or ambassador. Talking about the royal siblings, it was so hard to keep track of the royal siblings at the beginning. By the end, we could kind of get, who's really stands out and for what purpose. And they did have very different personalities and arcs. And given that we already have so many characters in the TOG series, now it just blew up even more with a whole other kingdom of people. It was overwhelming, guys. Let's move on to the Chaol-Yrene relationship. This is the biggest takeaway for me of the whole book, or at least the part that I enjoyed the most out of the whole book, because I just loved Yrene already. From Assassin's Blade, I knew she was going to be someone really special, and I've been waiting and waiting for her to have her come back, and she's finally here. It's a really long journey for her to see her worth, and you could tell at the beginning of this book that she knows she's very skilled, and she's come very far in the Tori Sesame, much further and quicker than other people. But she still has this almost doubt in her that can I really leave? And it's that same little bit of hint of that doubt that she had back when she met Yrene in that small town and that bar. I would say while she played a huge 90% role in Chaol's healing arc in this book, Chaol also helped her. Because Chaol gave her a challenge that she was able to solve, and in which case that helped her see that she's so much more capable than what she thought she was, and that she's deserving of love, too. Aww. Yrene. They clearly liked each other, or at least kind of liked each other from the beginning, but they were testing each other out with questions. And I love the moment when Yrene is asking him about his sexual abilities, and then he's just like, what are you trying to say? And I love that it was all just jabbing at him because she thought that he was sleeping with the servant. And Yrene, which I love that. I love how fiery Yrene is. I see a little bit of Yrene in her in that sense. And maybe it was Yrene who actually made her kind of feel that's okay to be as a woman. And I love that. I love that Yrene not only changed her life in terms of helping her escape that city and become a healer, but also showing her how spicy she can be. I love that. Okay, We've already talked about how they got started, but along the way, it wasn't a linear journey, right? They had moments of doubt for each other. For example, when she was trying to help him meet all of the other healers who were head over heels for him, he took it as she was trying to embarrass him, which I mean, like, there are obviously moments where she took jabs at him, but she would never stoop to that level. And I think it's important that he started recognizing that she really means well for him. And I think because he was so traumatized by the whole Yrene moving on to Rowan thing, that he found it really hard to trust. And aside from that, I mean, he really had nobody in his circle except for Dorian. So for him to finally recognize that there can be people other than Yrene who could support him in that very deep and intimate way with the right intentions, I think that was really key for Chaol's growth. And the moment when he was finally willing to accept help from the soldier who was helping him get off the horse, because he realized that the soldier had a disability and that Yrene was willing to help him. All these healers had the best of intentions. Even the Kagan wanted him to heal. Being surrounded by all these well-intentioned people, and honestly really patient people, I think was a key factor in Chaol's healing arc. So part of me was like, is Yrene too good for Chaol? And at first my answer was yes, but now I'm thinking no. Because Yrene, first of all, Yrene chose him, and she's the one who made him into the man he became by the end of this book. And their lives are literally tied together. She dies, he dies. He dies, she dies, right? So there's no breaking that apart. Like, this almost like just fate. It was meant to be, especially with Yrene being the one who helped her become a healer, and then them finally recognizing, acknowledging that mutual connection through the letter. That moment was so incredibly beautiful. And I have a quote, a gift from a queen who had seen another woman in hell and thought to reach out a hand, with no thought of it ever being returned. A moment of kindness, a tug on a thread. A moment of kindness from a young woman who had ended lives to a young woman who saved them. I mean, talk about full circles. Almost every episode I talk about what are the full circle moments in Aylin's journey of helping people along the way. This is obviously one of them for two people. Let's move on to Cailin's healing arc, because that was a huge part of it. Was like intertwined very much with their relationship. First of all, I didn't like that at the beginning he took out his anger on Yrene, and it was multiple times. And Yrene was really, really patient about it. He apologized, it all was fine. But I did not appreciate that. I also didn't appreciate him lashing out at Yrene too. Luckily, though, Yrene doesn't take shit. She was willing to stand up for herself and say, yeah, I'm going to walk out of here if you keep this up. And she knew that he knew he needed her. So at that point, that was also another pivotal moment for her to realize that she's worth a lot. And then finally, Chaol concluding that the chair is not a prison and it did not make him any lesser. Chaol, finally, you recognize the man that you deep down are. He joined the rebel group, but it felt more so for a personal agenda of seeking like-minded humans or just like a sense of purpose. Now he's realizing he's doing things for the right reasons. That shift in energy really changes the whole tone of this book too, once he realizes that. Because it's no longer about him fighting the whatever made up enemy that he comes up with. He could celebrate life for what it is. So going back to Yrene. Yrene is a key player in tackling the Valg. I feel like Yrene is the other side of Lysandra. Lysandra's really clutching that she's a shapeshifter, so she can be both up in the air and in the water. Now, Yrene is both a physical healer, but also an emotional healer, and she can get rid of the Valg. The fact that she is basically a key in and of herself, that's so cool. The way that she's able to use her goodness to push out the darkness within anyone who is taken over by the Valg. That's just so impressive. I feel like it was almost like Yrene when she first met her. That might have been what was really drawing her to Yrene. Not just that her seeing her capabilities, but also seeing that she had such goodness and light in her. Wait, that's so, I love that. That thought is really beautiful. So then finally we get to the Nesryn Sartok relationship and arc. I love the Nesrin-Sartaq relationship, but it was a little dragging. I'm not going to lie. Their journey trying to gather an army was draining. But I know that it was part of the plot, partially because we want to see them get together as a couple, and partially because Sartaq needed to prove himself and gather the army that was needed. So I understand why it was needed. I'm not really going to talk about that much, but what I will say about the relationship side is, Sartaq and that moment when they thought he was going to die, and then he admits how much he loves her, that he loved her since the beginning. How do you walk away from that? I'm so glad he didn't die. I mean, SJM usually doesn't kill off beloved characters, so other than Sam. But still, I love that they were able to build this really beautiful relationship. And remember how we talked about another episode that Dorian said he would walk away from the throne for Yrene, and I said that I wasn't sure if he'd be able to do that. Well, now we got an example of a prince being able to do it and doing it. So Sartaq actually literally was walking out of the room after telling his father he was going to marry Nesrin. And the man that his father is, he gave him the throne because of it. Because the man stood up for what he believed in, the people he loves. That is a true leader. That he knows that Nesrin would be an amazing queen and an amazing partner to him. And she's already proved it through her actions, both in Yrene and also here. And I think that that's what really, really moved me about Sartaq. And then the woman that Nesrin is, she still was like, are you sure? Like, can I really be? Yes. And then she wanted to bow to him, and he's like, not from you. Yes. I mean, I think honestly their relationship was the most like modern, I guess, type of relationship out of the whole series. I already talked about one of my favorite quotes. The other one is, and yet it was Yrene, godless and irreverent, who had honored him more than he had honored Nesrin. He's finally seeing all of the things that Yrene has done for him, all of the respect that she had for him, the goodness that she saw in him, that he didn't even see him himself. Ugh. I love that. The music to my ears. Good job, Chaol. And, of course, always props to Yrene. Okay, who was the most underrated character in this book? For me, it was Hafiza. She was a great healer, had so much skills, and she was not only a mentor in terms of teaching Yrene what she needed as a healer, but also as a person. I have another quote. It is a soul wound, Yrene, and letting it fester these years, I cannot blame you. But I will hold you accountable if you let it turn into something worse, and I will mourn you for it. Meaning that she recognizes Yrene has a healing arc of her own that needs to be had, and that she might make mistakes along the way, but that she's still going to hold her accountable for it. And I love that. And she still showed up for her up until the very end, Hafiza. What are we talking about next week? We are coming to an end of this story. We're going to talk about Kingdom of Ash, the finale of this TOG series. Join us next week. Bye, besties.